Hello everyone, and welcome to the Dice Commando YouTube channel. I'm Andrew, with you here as always. This is the Commando Chat, a no-holds-barred, anything-goes videocast about everything and anything gaming related. This video and others like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. Please show your support with a like and subscribe, and be sure to hit the bell notification icon so you don't miss any new videos. If you want to get involved with the channel, consider becoming a channel member. There are many benefits to channel membership, including access to our Discord, exclusive deck tech and strategy videos, and the opportunity to help create channel content. I want to sincerely thank all our channel members, as I truly couldn't do this without your support. You guys rock. Go Commando. Hello everyone, welcome to Dice Commando and the Commando Chat. I'm Andrew with you here as always, and thank you for joining me for today's discussion. So I've been noticing a trend in gaming over the last couple of years that actually, believe it or not, seems to favor the consumer. So today I want to talk about faction-based and modular games and how they've been gaining in popularity as of late, and how that very well may be the future of gaming. Hello everyone, and thank you for joining me again today for what I believe is a pretty interesting discussion. And I mean, that's kind of a silly statement, isn't it? Otherwise, I mean, why are we here really, right? But I've been noticing a trend over the last few years that actually favors the mainstream or the average gamer, which, you know, if you actually think about the very broad history of nerd gaming, if you will, I mean, I'm closing in on, what, 40 years old. I've been playing games since middle school. Most of the games that we've played have overall kind of fit a certain mold, not so much in the gameplay aspect, but really in how they approach, you know, being a game, right? And I mean, if you think about it from a fundamental standpoint, gaming companies are here to sell product. What they're trying to do ultimately is make money, and they're going to do so by making money off of us. So one of the easiest ways that consistently has worked in doing that is to sell you more of a game that you are already interested in or invested in, versus trying to sell you an individual new product every so often. Now, one of the ways this has historically worked very well is kind of the intro pack or the theme deck model, which then in theory turns to you buying boosters and then turns into the gotta catch 'em all mentality. Please don't sue me on that one. So this makes the point of entry very easy, but it kind of gives you, a taste. It gives you a lead into the rest of it. And to be fair, drug dealers have really been doing that for years. It's a pretty successful, type of model for keeping your current base involved, right? And this has really worked well, I mean, for a long time. Look at something like Magic, around for 30 years. It's really worked well for a certain type of person, which is your classic or your stereotypical gamer, if you will. But for the better part of 2 decades, really even longer, gaming companies really fought over kind of the existing pool, and they strive to get new blood in. Pokemon does a great job of that. They get new blood in the industry by making things user-friendly and so on. Magic has gone through a lot of stuff through the years of trying to get new people in, get diversity in. But lately there's kind of been a shift, and I've noticed that there's a lot of newer products on the market that kind of use a different approach in making it easier to get into the collective, or really the expandable gaming is probably the better way to call it. And this is very interesting because if you go the last, decade or so, board gaming has really exploded, even with mainstream popularity, right? It's not nerds that play board games anymore. There's a lot of people that play board games. So if you look at games like Settlers, and I'm dating myself here because that was like 20 plus years ago at this point, right? But if you look at Settlers Catan, so it used to be if you bought a board game like Monopoly or like a Risk or something more traditional like that, you just paid your 20, 25 bucks or whatever it was at the time, and that was it. You played the game and you were done with it. But now Settlers came on the scene and was like, all right, now you can buy expansions, right? You buy Seafarers or whatever the other ones are out there. I don't know how many are out there anymore. And then you look at like Epidemic or a Betrayal on House of the Hill, something like that, which are even more modern, and it becomes clear that people are really okay with buying expansions. I mean, look, I'm looking at my shelf right now, and I have multiple expansions of Cards Against Humanity just up there, right? I mean, just a very simple party game, right? And people are going out and spending, another $15, another $20 to continue to expand, even a game like that. So I wonder if it didn't trigger something somewhere from an industry standpoint where they're like, okay, People like what they like, and if we give them more of what they like, they'll buy more. But they don't want to buy something that they don't want. And I grant you that's somewhat of it's somewhat of a ridiculous statement, right? But if you really think about it, the traditional gamer, the addicts in this case, if you will, right, referring back to the title of this cast, they're really going to go out and buy all of their, or a significant amount of their game, even if it's not exactly what they want. But in order for these companies to really expand and try to get a bigger piece of the pie, they have to be very selective with what they offer. Because if the general gamer, the general population, if they're forced to buy something undesirable, or they feel that they're wasting their money in order to participate in a game, they'll just choose not to participate, right? I think we've seen that, right? They have no problem they'll buy the base set of Cards Against Humanity and they'll throw another $60 at it because they want to have fun. But if they feel that they have to buy stuff that they're not going to use, they're just not going to elect. They're going to elect to just not buy that. So, I've been talking for a bit. Let's go ahead and put this in perspective, because this is really where the faction-based or the modular game comes in. So what am I really talking about being a faction-based game? My definition is a faction-based game allows you to buy some subset of the game and be happy and completely able to play the game only owning that particular subset of it. And what that means is that there's no expectation of the consumer or of the player of having to buy all of it, even though it's there when you probably eventually decide that you want it. So let's just go ahead and throw up an example of a faction-based game that I personally have been enjoying, right? For those of you who watch regularly, I have really been enjoying Star Wars Legion. Now, this is a miniatures game, and to be clear, the details of the game aren't really important in terms of how to actually play it. But this is a pure faction-based game. So in this game, you have 4 factions you can choose from. You can choose from the Rebel Alliance, you can choose from the Empire, you can choose from the Clones or the Galactic Republic, or you can choose from the droids, the Separatists. Now, in this case, there's no overlap whatsoever between any of these factions. So when you come into that, so for example, if you buy Boba Fett, you play Boba Fett with the Empire, and he won't work with any of the other factions. Now, that kind of sounds bad if you think about it, but then, well, initially that might sound bad. But if you think about it, what this allows someone who's coming into the game to do is say, okay, there's $1,000 worth of product out there right now. In order for me to play this game, I'd have to spend $1,000, but you don't. Because it is faction-based, you only have to really consider, if you want to play the game at some level, you only have to consider buying 25% of the product. And then when you look at it and you realize that, I can choose which expansions I want and customize, you might only be buying 10, 15% of the product in the game. So it becomes far more approachable for someone who just wants to play the game. And then, what may happen down the line? Sure, you decide you want to pick up another army or something like that, and that works out for the retailer. But from a general perspective, are you going to approach a game and say, man, this is going to be a $1,000 commitment? Absolutely not. The average person is not going to do that. But if for $100 in this case for Legion, or $150, you can have a really good time and enjoy the game, it makes it really far more approachable, to the general person. And again, I get that in this case, maybe that's not the ideal example, because $150 is a lot of money to a lot of people, myself included. But you get the point, right? In that you're okay only owning some subset, because you can still play the game to its full enjoyment by not having to have everything, right? So it's very, very approachable from a consumer. Now let's go ahead and we'll talk the big bad in the room. I mean, it's an industry staple, Magic the Gathering. So Magic the Gathering, and to be fair, over the years they've done a lot of different intro products, a lot of different methods of getting people in. They're probably they're almost certainly one of the best in the industry at trying to get new players in. But Magic is a completely open, it's non-faction based to the extreme. It's completely open. What I mean by this is, right, if let's say I buy my intro deck and I'm like, you know what, I want to be a white player. I'm justice, I'm fairness, wisdom, and all the other stuff it represents. Or, you're like, all right, I'm with nature, I'm a hippie, I want to go, play green. Either way, you're like, all right, I'm going to go buy a white intro deck, or I'm going to go buy a green intro deck. And you're like, this is really fun, I want to get some more. What you're going to do is you're going to go buy a booster pack. And what's going to happen in that booster pack is you're going to get some white cards, but by and large you're going to get stuff that you can't use, right? You're going to get, colorless cards you can use, but you're going to get blue, black, red, and green cards that you can't use. So at that point, one of two things happens, really. That's you either make the conversion that you have stuff sitting on your shelf that you can't use, and in order to use it you have to spend more. So that's inherently kind of a feel bad, right? And again, I'm talking to, people know what they're buying when they buy it, right? But I'm saying to the general population, you have this stuff sitting on your shelf that you can't use unless you spend more money. So that's a feel bad. Or on the flip side, you know that in order to expand your game, you have to basically waste money, right? And in the case of the booster pack, right, where there's rarity, you don't even know what you're necessarily getting because it's random-ish, you might not get anything that you want for your particular chosen color, and in this case, your faction. And that really leads to a feel bad. So I think that there's a very, there's a huge wall barrier of entry that you really have to take the next step on to get into a non-faction based game like this. So that's really more of the comparison that I wanted to make between 1 and 2. And what I'd like to do now is kind of look at a bunch of other, or a few other games, Star Wars Destiny being one of them. So Star Wars Destiny was set up faction-based-ish, in where there was hero and villain sides. So you could be a hero player, you could be a villain player, and then within that there were 3 colors. So ideally, you could say, I want to be a hero blue player. Shout out J Danger, right? And you also have the magic problem then that you buy a booster pack and you don't know what you're going to get. It may not be valuable for you. But you also have this problem, which of course is not a problem, but you have the next step, which you certainly see in Magic, which works for many consumers, just like in Destiny, of trying to set the hook, and that, okay, well, because I can play blue and red together, because I can play white and green together, whatever it may be, I'm not going to end up getting rid of my stuff, right? I could trade it to friends or something like that, but I'm not going to, because at one point I might want to play it all. And then you get into this point where now you're in. And that is a great thing from the industry to continue to sell product to you. But when somebody else is looking at it, that means that, right, if you really think about it, in order to get in on each expansion, you're looking at a several $100 purchase each time something comes up, and you can't even necessarily use all of it. So that's a very big mental barrier to entry that I think is stopping, right? Like I said, it works very good for the gamer subset of the population, but it doesn't help bring in, it doesn't help sell product to the rest of the general population. So we have another game, Flesh and Blood, is doing very, very well right now, but within the gamer community. And this is also, it's kind of a pseudo faction based, right? You choose your particular hero. You can only play cards of your hero with your hero, and there's of course generic cards. But again, when you open the booster pack, you'll get stuff from everybody. Now, there are people out there who've done a good job, like my own playgroup, for example, and other playgroups out there. They'll divide the purchases up. So instead of me buying 4 boxes, my group will buy 4 boxes, and we'll split down the hero faction lines, and then everybody walks away. And in that case, does the company care that they sold 4 boxes overall instead of selling? I mean, of course they'd rather sell 16, right? But I walked away with 4 boxes worth for my faction, and so did my buddy, but we only bought 4 overall. But the company's bringing in people that might not have otherwise been in there. So this is a pseudo faction base, but it's certainly not going to capitalize on the person who goes to Target and buys the box and then comes back to buy another box. And before we move on to kind of my crux statement, I do want to give a shout out to a game I played. This was early 2000s. One of the favorite games I ever played, 7th Sea. They had a very, their distribution path was still random boosters that you can get stuff from many factions in. But looking at these cards right now, what you see below that little number with the yellow box, that was the character's cost, or the crewman in this case cost. And below that is the different symbol you can see on all the guys there. That is their faction identity symbol. And there was a really cool mechanic in this game that I think hasn't really been replicated yet, which also might help people a little bit, is that if you look at the general there in the bottom left corner, he had a bonus that says while you have 3 or other Montaigne crew on your ship, your maximum is increased by 2. Right? So the rules of the game were you could play cards from any faction. So any card you had was usable. But your guy would get a bonus if you were loyal to your faction. And then if you look at the bottom right there, you have Gerard. He's the first mate of the ship. He has this keyword called loyal. And a loyal crew, right, it was a way for them to really keep things in balance on certain higher power characters. Loyal characters would only work with a captain that matched their faction symbol. Right, so I think that this was one of the best designed mechanics I've ever seen in terms of keeping things sandbox and open and usable for everybody, but still being able to control kind of their game. And, you know, it was just better for a distribution standpoint. Now, of course, this is still a collectible card game. You still kind of have that feeling of gotta catch them all, if you will. But I thought that was a very good balance. Now, bringing us back to the future of gaming and why I think faction-based and modular is, I mean, I think I've kind of proven my thesis statement there. But now I want to really talk about Marvel Champions. And disclaimer here, I don't think that, I'm not a huge Marvel Champions guy. I don't have a lot of experience with it. But I do think that Marvel Champions really heralds the next phase, if you will, of expandable gaming. And I want to be very clear here, right? Living card game, which this is technically a living card game, expandable card game, whatever you want to call it. It's not a new concept at all. However, I think that this is the best poised concept or best poised product model for at least the near future. Because what someone can do is they can go to the store, and I think the entry set's like $60, right? So you buy the core set, and then you have a couple characters, and you're like, wow, this is really fun. I love playing with my friends. Now, do note this is a cooperative, which I also think is very, very good in the current environment. But stuff like that will change faster than, you know, the actual how to approach consumer model that we're talking about. So you go in and you buy this core set. And you're like, all right, this is super awesome. I want more. Well, you can say, if I like Thor, but I don't like Captain America, you don't have to buy Captain America. And you're not missing out on anything. You're expanding your game. You have Thor. Fantastic. If you like Black Widow, but you don't like, I don't know, whomever, because you like, Scarlett Johansson's amazing. I love Scarlett Johansson. Let's do this. You grab Black Widow, and you don't have to have everything. Now, down the line, do you end up buying them all because you want to try everything out? I think a lot of people do. But you don't feel that you have to. Right, and that's the thing is if you walk in, right, you're a brand new person, you don't have a background in gaming, you walk in and you look at the wall at your gaming store, and you're like, in order to play Marvel Champions, I have to buy all of this. You're just not going to do it. But in these expandable models, knowing that you only have to spend $60 or maybe $75 to maybe get the guy you want, you're like, okay, I want Cap. $75, you're in, and you get to play with your buddies, and you have a lot of options and expandability. I think that's a far better sell, and I think that's why a lot of the industry games are really starting to go to this expandable model. I mean, A, they have the IP they can keep reusing. They don't need to necessarily develop from scratch, but people don't feel that they have to buy everything. And again, I think that a lot of times, I think a lot of people end up buying everything because they want to have it all, but they don't feel like they have to at the start. Whereas if you look at something like a Magic the Gathering or something like that, it's very intimidating to look at the startup cost, if you will, of getting into a game like that. So that's really it for me today. I've been very impressed with a lot of the trends that we're seeing in gaming. I mean, there's some very smart people running these companies I mean, that's a very obvious statement, right? But yeah, that's basically it for today. I've been very impressed, and I think that that's kind of where we're headed in the future. Now, I do want to be very careful. I give a lot of credit to Marvel Champions. I'm not necessarily giving FFG the credit for this. I think they've kind of taken far advantage of the LCG model, the living card game model, because they do this thing where they'll put the one card you have to get in a pack you don't want to buy, and that kind of defeats the purpose of this. I don't think that's a thing in Marvel Champions, which is maybe why it's doing so well. But again, if you give consumers something they want to buy and you don't feel like you're forcing them to buy more, at least at first, I think you have a very successful card game model. So anyway, that is my discussion for today. I want to thank you for joining me, but let me know what you think. Do you agree? Is the Marvel, I shouldn't say the Marvel model, is the expandable card game model more of the future of what we're looking at for tabletop, not only card gaming, but miniatures as well, right? Is the faction-based or the modular model really better than the all-encompassing model like Magic going forward? Now, let me know your thoughts. If nothing else, guys, go Commando.